welcome to Mornings with Miller, January 14th. This is our second one for 2021. Robin and I, if you haven't joined us yet or haven't seen the update for the year, but Robin and I were looking at our family of brands and our alliance brands, and we think it's really important to introduce them to the market and be able to talk about different products that work really, really well with Herman Miller family. And we've been doing a lot of things with the wonderful Erin Bishop, and we have her on today to talk about Framery. And we're going to have Erin take it away.
Awesome. Thanks. And thanks, Sam and Robin, for having me join today. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yep.
All good.
Cool. Very good. So I am actually, I don't know if you can see me now. Am I on camera with most people there? Because I don't see myself at the bottom, but I am actually broadcasting live from the Framery 2Q booth in the Herman Miller showroom in Phoenixville, which they just reconfigured and added this booth in here, and it's awesome. So you can see, if you can see me, I can adjust some dimmability in here. So it's
we can't see you. I don't know if anybody.
Oh, okay, no problem. Well,
Erin, you're not visible.
Well, after we get to the question and answer, you'll be able to see me.
Okay, perfect.
All right, cool. So if you go to the next slide, Robin, because there's two short videos I like to kind of open up with to show you a little bit about, and you can see the 2Q pod here. Go ahead and click play on that first one. This is in Finland. I don't know if you can get the volume on it. You can't hear it.
Robin, you're muted.
I mean, that's why.
So this is the same exact thing that happened last week. Sorry, I didn't know there were videos with sound.
That's okay. That's all right. Why don't you click on the video on the right-hand side, because it's cool to actually see the video.
I got it.
Do you need help? No, she's broadcasting it for me. Yeah, we're good. Are you bringing the presentation back up, Robin? We'll see you.
Welcome to what technology looks like in 2021.
Okay, hold on.
You would think after like 8 months we'd all be good at this, but I feel like every once in a while we're all like, wait, what happened? Why doesn't this work the way it did yesterday?
All right, now
there we go.
So click on working from home. This was an ad promo that we ran on the right-hand side. And if we have issues, we'll just go back to it and I'll send it again on LinkedIn, and you guys can connect with me there. Don't worry about it, Robin. We'll come back to it. That's fine. So you'll see that
content not available when I clicked on it.
Okay, that's fine. So I'll connect it on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'll repost it there. But it's a really cool video. We ran a promotion to win a pod earlier on in the beginning of COVID, and we actually had somebody win the pod that broadcasted in-house broadcasting. And it's just kind of a funny play on what working from home actually looks like, whether it's kids or dogs. And basically at the end, the two kids end up in the pod and the parents outside the pod. So it's a fun and interactive video to look at. So if we can get that working later, I'll see what I can do. But go ahead, click to the next slide, Robin. Oh, look at that. You got the volume.
Yeah, no, I got the volume working.
Yeah.
Here.
West Virginia, Mountain Mama.
Awesome. So there is an actual karaoke pod, just so you know, in Finland, and that would be it. So they had they like to use it there once in a while. Obviously, that was before COVID and being able to bounce around in a pod. But I kind of wanted to open up. We have a lot of people on the call, and thanks everybody for joining. And see if anybody had any thoughts right now on pods in the workplace, whether you've you thought about, know about, have experience with pods, whether you want to type it in the chat or unmute yourself and say a few things, that's fine.
I think the ventilation that the pods have is like just spot on, incredibly important right now, and is going to help greatly with people's acceptance of them.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great point and something that we'll touch on. Thanks for adding that in. Cool. So we'll keep on going. And if you go ahead, we can talk about it always afterwards. So I have here to illustrate best for you a nice little diagram to follow along of a skit to kind of tell you a little bit about the story of Framery if you're not familiar. So meet here then the first scene, that the noisy boss, and this is a true story of how Framery evolved. Go to the next slide, the next skit, and you'll see two. I'm sorry, go back, Robin. If you go to the next, the slide 2 there, and you'll see the two individuals in the white shirts, and they are basically go to their boss and their noisy boss, and they say, listen, you're really loud on the phone. We'd love if you could take your call elsewhere. So the boss said, well, why don't you two build me a booth? And the two individuals started to look up this booth, and they find out that there's actually nothing like it on the market. And they did a lot of research on it. So after some time of doing some research and looking it up, they decide that they're going to build a booth. And at some point, not too much longer after that, they came back to their boss and they said, listen, we got two things for you. One, we built you a booth, and two, we quit. And that was how Framery started. And, since then they've been building booths. And if you go to the next slide, Robin, you'll see the evolution of the booths and how it started. In 2010, you'll see there what it looked like. And in 2014, as we continue to do modifications and tweaks, but the aesthetics and the design change quite frequently, which I think is great for the designers to see how it changed over time. And in 2011, we actually sold our first booth to Twitter. The two individuals who developed as our CEO and owner, Simu, he still takes part in the company, and we hear from him quite frequently, at least once a week. So he's very much involved in Framery in general. So you'll see there what the pods look like from 2010 to 2014, and they continue to evolve. Go ahead to the next slide. So word for word, Framery pods, the whole idea is to reduce distractions and interruptions in the office open plan. And when you have an open plan office and use Framery pods, those inside those pods and outside the pods, individuals, will be able to focus better in the office. Next slide. So you might ask, we're in a unique time, and I think we all can agree on that. So we're all looking for creative solutions to present and discuss with our clients and some different ideas. So why now pods, and what does that look like in the office? So really over 50% of people, and these are just some statistics I want to talk about, have trouble concentrating in an open office plan, right? And you got to think about that. And if you saw the opening video, I understand that a lot of us aren't in the office right now, but I think whether we're at home and we have a number of distractions, and realize we want to be back in the office for less distractions, that's going to continue to grow, because individuals, either it's quiet at home and they have less distractions, they go in the office and they find more distractions, or they go into the office to try and get those less distractions from being at home. So it's proven that you're 15% less productive when working in an open office plan. And it really takes about 20 minutes to regain your focus after a small distraction. And I don't know if anybody else can witness that firsthand, but, when I have my kid virtual to school come over and ask me a question and I'm in the middle of doing something, it takes time to regain and get traction again back to what I was doing. On top of that, we're really going to be going into an era where, we're trying to figure out what are the best ways for individuals to be able to focus and collaborate. And that kind of transitions into 80% of meetings are held between 4 people or less. And I think you'll continue to see that based on the fact that you're going to have less people in the office, more people at home. You're going to figure out how am I going to pull these two together? And this shot here on the right-hand side is an awesome example of dividing floor plans into zones. And the cool thing about it is If you could, like I said, if I can show this pod afterwards, you have that glass between the sections, which is able to ensure light that transmits through the pod. So you might be creating that division, but it's not a wall, and you can still see through it, and it still gives you that perspective of the office. Go ahead, next slide. So, based on time, I wanted to just jump right in to show you our Framery product family. We have our Framery O, and we say it's ideal for one, awkward for two, especially now. And you'll see you have a height adjustable stool in there and a table. We'll get into some of the logistics on the pods. You have your Framery Q, which is your meeting pod for 1 to 4 people. Your 2Q, which is our full-size meeting room pod, which is actually the pod that I'm in now. And each of these pods have different configurations that you can do based on the type of environment that your clients are looking for. We also have our Framery Flip and Fold, which is not pictured there, which is it's similar. It's in line with what the ADA regulations are as well, to be able to place in work environments. So if you go ahead to the next slide, Robin, you'll see I have the Framery O and the video conference ready. Now, the video conference ready is really a great solution, and all of our pods can be equipped with a TV. And you think about, well, what does that allow me for? It allows me for telehealth applications, peer-to-peer video when you have individuals in the office, at home, and need a private space to collaborate and talk. It can replace unnecessary travel, which we know is not going to be probably happening as much anytime soon. It gives you a wide table with uninterrupted and be able to work on that, and you can clean those surfaces as well. And some of those features of the VCR is you have the control panel for adjusting your airflow and lighting, which is, you'll see a little black box right next to the TV there. And then you have a brightness adjustability for the ceiling. So if it's too bright when you're on video, you can dim those lights in there as well. So I really only put the features, I put these up, again, in essence of time and just for some discussion. I wanted to just talk about the pods. A few other things to take note of in all the pods. They can all be, you can put fire safety, you can put sprinkler systems in any of the pods. They have directions and cutouts on the top. So if you have fire marshals, and it really depends, on code city to city and what is required in different spaces, but you can put that in all of the pods. The ventilation, we're also going to get into talking about here in a minute. If you want to go ahead to the next slide. So you can see here is a diagram, which is how the ventilation works, right? So the air that's outside the pod is the same air that you're getting inside that pod. So your ventilation system works coming through the top there where you see the arrow going down and then out the sides. So it's important for the spacing of the pods from the ceiling, as well as being able to space the pods on the side, if you're going to put them side by side, to make sure that it's ventilating properly. And that was mentioned earlier. So if you go ahead to the next slide. The airflow rates that are in all of our Framery pods are close to 10 times higher than what the minimum requirements by the International Mechanical Code. So, that is something to think about. And we do have some signage, which if you go to the next slide, in your pods, they're going to the air inside of the pods is going to turn over every 70 to 100 seconds. So those fans that are in that pod are going to remain engaged when somebody leaves the pod for 8 minutes on high, and then they'll go to a minimal setting, for the energy savings after that 8 minutes. But you can imagine within that 8 minutes time, that air is constantly being turned over inside that pod. Next slide. And here's some signage that we created. If you have any questions regarding the COVID, we do have some different diagrams, signage, and cleaning maintenance as well. But this is something we provided for clients so that they can take it and put it on the pod. So when individuals are going to step in, they understand what they're stepping into. As we can all probably agree, psychological safety is huge during COVID. So we want to be able to convey the message whether it's a pod, whether individuals are coming in the office, which direction they should walk, where they can go, and just things that they can see and visualize so that there is a sense of safety when they're walking in the office. Next one. So here's just a quick diagram I wanted to show you. If you were thinking, well, where do I put pods? How do I lay out an office? We do have a pod placement guide, which is really cool. And you see here that the pods are in high traffic areas. We find that they are used most and most successful in higher traffic areas because when someone has a private call, they don't want to run down and around the corner in the hallway to see if anybody's in that pod and if it's available. They want to make sure, they want to be able to look up, see if it's available, and try and get in that pod if they have a quick call that they need to hop on. So we put them in areas and find that they're most successful is when you place them into high traffic areas. And you can see too, you can use them as dividers as we showed earlier within office spaces. Next one.
Erin, we do have a question in here that may relate to that
Sure.
slide you just had.
Okay.
The question from Jeremiah is, what situations or conditions have been successful in convincing clients to pay for them? So basically, where's the value add, and what can he say to get some framery in his projects?
No, that's a great question. And I think the question you got to start asking your clients is, what type of environments, and I think it's conducive to who your employees are, but, there's a lot of questions you can ask them. Are you looking for a privacy factor moving forward? Do you have a lot of conferences? How do you plan on holding those conferences when somebody works in the office and at home? And do you have a conference room in there that's being used by one person and taking up a lot of space? So it's a space savings at the end of the day. And on top of that, if you move your space and we may or may not see downsizing of offices in the future, but if you move your space, the pod can come with you. If you build walls and you put them up in the office, guess what? You can't take those walls down and bring them with you. You can take the pods with you and transform them into that space and mold them to that space, which is a really cool idea and a great cost savings for a client instead of having to go out and build things, in the future. There's lots of options and to be able to discuss with clients. And I think that again, it's going to change client to client on what makes sense for them and what kind of questions you're going to ask them. But that's a great question. And I hope I answered that for you in looking at, some of the reasons why they're utilized in a system, in an office environment, in a healthcare environment, doctors wanting to hop on a call, someone wanting to have a private conversation with a patient, the telehealth applications, the schooling, if you have we've started to put them in school environments, and where can students collaborate with teachers in a private room, or where can they collaborate with students in a library? So lots of questions to ask when you're exploring that. Go ahead on to the next slide, Robin. So I'm just going to show you a few photos, and we can open up to discussion, some more discussion here. And you'll see, the divider space with letting the light through, as it says, unintrusive barriers to create sections here, which are cool ideas. The last one that you saw too is cool because it's right by the workstation. So they say about 1 pod per every 10 workstations is ideal for the individual pods, so that, people know who's using that pod. It's not being utilized all the time. If you're having it to 20 people, so you know who's in and out of those pods, and you can keep it to small individuals. You can go ahead to the next one. Here's one cool too, some different settings. You see, we've done some in hospitals, as well as schools, some different environments. Here's some of the businesses that we're working with around the country, that I wanted to get an idea of, who is utilizing these pods in their spaces. Go to the next one. You'll also know that we actually just won the Framerio VCR, the 2020 Good Design Award, which was really exciting. We also, I know it's small to see, but we had won Best of Neocon in 2019 Silver Award in Acoustic and Privacy. And acoustics is huge. I know we didn't touch on that, but that is one of the main things I'm looking for when you're trying to put pods in spaces, to make sure that, when someone is in that pod, are you able to hear them outside that pod? All that we do, and we're so fortunate to be partnered with Herman Miller a few years back, but all Framery does is pods. That is what we develop. We have a team of over 30 research and development individuals in Finland. We have a US hub. Our lead times are great, but this is all that Framery does, and we're so fortunate to be, with such a renowned partner in Herman Miller. So go ahead to the next. And that's all I got. So brief overview, want to keep it short and sweet.
So Erin, I did put your LinkedIn, I guess, handle in the chat. So people, if it's in the chat, if you want to connect with Erin. And then I just wanted to add a note that I feel like we've been talking about the future of the office a lot. And I think that when we see people moving back to the office, whether it's full-time or part-time, that they're still going to be seeking that, like, possibly, if you don't have lots of things going on at home, but that real true quiet that you probably haven't experienced, that felt deafening in the beginning, but now you're very accustomed to. I think that Framery will start to become a product that you can talk to your clients about and say, this is a way to kind of emulate that true quiet that you're able to experience at home, even when you're in the office. So I feel like obviously the office is changing significantly, and it's really going to be moving into distributed work, but thinking about how to support the really great things that we've gotten at home, which is in some cases for some people true quiet, and being able to support that in an office where that sound can feel really, really strong if you haven't been there in a while.
Yeah. And two other things too is, one, I mentioned the LinkedIn because I didn't want to forget, but we have some exciting things coming up that I'm sworn to secrecy, only for that we are working with our Herman Miller partners down the line here. And I plan to put something out about a week after we talk about that from Framery, to have an open conversation and information overview about a week after that. So look for something around mid-February. So I can't really touch more on that. So that was one. And then two, if anybody wasn't on the call ahead of time, I did mention I am in the spectrum. You can see me, right?
I cannot. I only
cannot.
see Sam.
No, we can't see you.
So I don't know.
I was going to say, even if we tried it, we could spotlight you.
Oh yeah, you're spotlighted. Your video is.
I spotlighted you, but we don't see you. We saw you before. Maybe turn your camera off and back on.
Oh, I got you. Here, that's why. Here we go. I'm good.
All right, now
There she is.
There I am. So I wanted to just show you, I am in the, like I mentioned, the Spectrum showroom here. They just put a 2Q pod in, and it's really cool. So this is the back of the pod. This is the front of the pod. This is our larger 4 to 6 person pod with a table here in the middle. And you have the outlets and USB in the middle of the table there, which is really cool. You have the dimmability option here for the lighting. As you can probably see, I'm getting lighter and darker. You can also put a screen bracket here, which is really cool to conference and have conversations. So I thought it would be cool. We don't all get out of the office that much, and I wanted to come and hop in a pod and be live somewhere other than my house, which is nice.
Hey, Erin, it's Mike with Spectrum. Can you talk a little bit about the Finnish offering, since we had so many A&D attendees today? I'm always blown away when I see some of the great colors.
Yeah, sure. So we have a nice selection of finishes. And if anybody needs finish boxes, we're actually coming out with all new ones here, so I can get you on the list and get some out. But we have a variety of options, all available from our US hub. White and black are the most common, but I believe it's over, I want to say like 17 or so options for the outside finish of the pod. Now it's cool because we actually were going to put it in the chat, which I didn't put it in, but we have a framery configurator, which I can pop in the chat here, that you can build the pods, and the frames you can do different colors from the outside of the pod. And here, let me see if I can pull this in the chat here. So if anybody wants to build their own pod, and if you build your own pod, I was going to do extra kudos if you send it to me. I was going to do extra kudos and give away an extra, some framery swag for the pod that you built. So you can do the outside of the frame, then you can also do the frame of the pod. You can do them 2 different colors. We have this acoustical felt, which is a gray. This is standard in our pods, and a gray carpet as well. Trying to think what else. You can do, most of pods are the white table. Am I missing? Reed's on the call as well. He's my director for framery and also the first employee. So he has quite more experience. So if there's anything you want to add in, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you're welcome to pitch in anything you want.
Yeah, no, thanks. And it's a good question. I think it was Mike that asked the question. Yeah, so basically Aaron covered basically everything. I think the exteriors, the frames. I don't know that you mentioned the seat fabric. So all the seating in our pods, you can play with the colors of the seating as well. So yeah, customizability aesthetically is pretty good. You can't tinker with any modification of the structure of the pods. We do have just 3 basic sizes, but otherwise you can get fairly creative. And as Aaron said, our configurator tool on our website allows you to sort of visualize or virtually construct the pod that you would want, play with the color scheme, and show it to clients and see what they might like. So
yeah. Good question, Mike. Any others?
Are we still offering copper on some of the fittings? Is that an option?
Yeah, on your handles, you can do copper plated door handles if you want, which is, it's an option to be able, it doesn't collect like the virus, it doesn't stay long on surfaces. So that is an option that you can put on the pods as well, yes.
That's great.
I would say that's inherently antimicrobial or an antiviral is the material, I guess. That's cool.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, if I could add just a quick 2 cents, and nice job, Aaron, and thanks for all the good questions. But COVID has thrown an interesting curveball to framery, because at the beginning of these last 10 or however many months, people were a little bit skittish about stepping into pods, and I heard a couple people think of them or articulate that they thought of them as maybe germ factories, like you step inside, someone was just in there and you don't know what they touched, and basically everyone's a little scared. So the psychological safety that is on top of everyone's minds these days is something that we're excited to be able to say we alleviate pretty well with the rate of ventilation of all of our product models, which someone mentioned earlier, and also just the cleanability. The way I put it to people is, when people feel safe to go back into their office space, they should feel safe to go into a framery pod, because the materials they're of a high enough quality, they're exceptionally durable, they can be cleaned back to disinfected very easily. And once someone steps out of the pod, basically the air inside is refreshed within about a minute. So, as long as you wait a minute before you go in, the person who was in there before really has no effect on that space if they've cleaned up after themselves, or if you'd like to disinfect after they've left, which these days, as you can see, I'm working from home. Aaron has the luxury of going and visiting a dealer. I'm here in Chicago, and the dealers aren't inviting us in too readily these days, but I imagine everyone's cleaning just about every surface in the offices that they're visiting these days more than ever. Last thing I'll add is, Jeremiah, you asked a great question about circumstances that we see people willing to pay. And in our case, this is a pod that sells at a premium price. We're never going to be the cheapest pod on the block, and there's a lot of pods out there these days. But I would say, it's interesting to see that people are paying for the quality, especially in environments where they want to have configurability and reconfigurability of a space, because whether they only have 10% or 20% or 50% of their staff back in the office today, ideally, we all hope, 6 months from now, they'll have more of their staff back in the office, and they might need to reconfigure the floor plate as that influx back into an office space changes. And lastly, and Aaron touched on it, but the cost of construction, if you're trying to build a private space in an office as a part of normal construction, you're involving multiple tradespeople, you're involving a lot of different materials, and to actually make a constructed phone room with any real sound attenuation or sound insulation is actually surprisingly costly. So if Jeremiah, you or any of your clients are more interested in the detail that we've done with GCs and figuring out how much does a phone room built into a wall cost versus how much does a framery pod cost, I think you'd be surprised that framery pods cost a bit less. And likewise, as Aaron mentioned, the framery pod, you can take it across town with you. You can take it to Australia with you if your company moves. Whereas, a phone room has that permanence built in that doesn't allow it to be quite as flexible. So, thanks for the question. Sorry to kind of hijack it. I just wanted to make a couple quick points.
No, thanks, Reed. And you can also you can get wheels on the O as well. So it helps for the movability factor. But I just have to say, I love everybody's images. If you go in the conversation, these are great. The GIFs.
Yeah, when we send out the email, I write in there that, our chats can be pretty active. So if you're not on the call, but you join the calls normally, that you can mute it. And I give directions on muting because I know I've been in meetings and I'm like, why is this other meeting going off? And it's because I've been in it before and I'm not in it now, but it's crazy. So yeah, it's usually a pretty fun group and people ask questions and anything for entertainment.
Fun times. I love it.
So we ran over a little bit, but if you guys have any questions for Erin, you want to throw them in the chat or yell them out or have any comments or experiences with the pods, let us, we have some time. We can do that with you guys. And if not, feel free to jump off and we'll catch up with you next week when we're doing our presentation with Liz from Geiger.